What is up, guys? Welcome to part 2 of my Rastakhan's Rumble set review. Let's get right into it. Just like always, we're reviewing these cards based on both power level and design. We're starting off with Zul'jin, 10 mana. Hero for the set here is in Hunter. It is a battle cry. Cast all spells you've played this game. Targets chosen randomly. And you, of course, get 5 armor. The new hero power you get is a 2 damage, 2 mana Berserker Throw. So very similar to your original hero power, except we're going to assume you can target this one. A little bit uncreative in that department. As far as the battle cry goes, it's pretty damn good because in Hunter, the random stuff doesn't matter quite a bit. You have cards like Deadly Shot, cards like Crushing Walls that get better with this. Not sure you play that, but you could. And the Hunter Spellstone can't go wrong, among other things. Now, does this mean you don't play cards like Kill Command? Maybe. This might alter what you include in the deck. This bumps into Deathstalker Rexxar just a little bit, but honestly not too much because Rexxar's power on turn 6 as a spell cannot be denied. That 6 mana, gain 5 armor, deal 2 to everything to your opponent is honestly quite strong at that point in the game, usually. And going late, you would lose your Rexxar hero power by playing this, but ultimately this would win the game. I didn't even mention secrets, right? You play this, you get all your secrets back. Again, secrets can not go wrong. So, yeah, you might have to look at cards like Kill Command, Hunter's Mark, etc. But a lot of the spells with Hunter, again, don't go wrong. So I do think this is quite good. Mojo Masters a High is a 6 mana 5/5 neutral legendary battlecry. Set each player to 5 mana crystals. Wow, that is a game changer card to be sure. It's going to put a hold on any sort of super combo your opponent might be having. And you can play around big AoEs, specifically Psychic Scream, I think, although Priest is getting a new Brawl-type card, which we're going to look at here in a minute. This is quite strong. It is notable not good on turn 6, because you play it on turn 6, you actually go down a crystal, and then your opponent goes right up to 6. So you can't play this on 6, really. You have to save it for later, but it's good at what it does. It does counter ramp druids possibly on turn 6 if they ramped ahead of you very hard. You can play this on 6. Yes, you get set back a mana, but you also set them back to the fair amount of mana that they would normally have. And yeah, so pretty interesting here. Yeah, if you're trying to stop sort of not Death Knights, but heroes now, then this does a good job of that. If you're scared of Gul'dan or Jaina or something, you can block that for a few turns. It's interesting that this is sort of another answer to Druid. We first had the Skulking Geist, and then we had the Mossy Horror, and now we have another neutral here, the Mojo Masters High for the ramping. So all together, it is a game changer. It's gonna be strong in the right situation for sure. Blast Wave, 5 mana epic mage spell, says deal 2 damage to all minions, and then has Overkill, add a random mage spell to your hand. So Overkill here would only work on 1 health minions, which is not great. But if you get, 1 or 2 random spells, it's already a good deal. Even if you get 1 random spell, it's not the worst thing in the world. This being 5 mana over a Volcanic Potion, which is no longer in Standard, but Volcanic Potion costs 3, this costs 5. The advantage of this is it plays nice with Dragon's Fury, whereas the Volcanic Potion might not be ideal in a sort of big mana mage deck where this plays around that problem, right? The Dragon's Fury decks, 5 mana is sort of the barrier to entry. They don't play secrets and stuff because they want to guarantee that the Fury, kind of does what it needs to do. So very strong card here. This scales very hard with spell power. You can play the new elemental, not the new, the one from the last set where you play it, you give something +2 spell power. You play a 4 damage Blast Wave against something like a Hunter Spellstone. Well, you just filled your hand with a bunch of cards. So altogether, the reason this is so good is because it's never terrible, and the upside of just getting a bunch of random stuff is kind of insane. So very good card. Mass Hysteria, another 5 mana board clear, this time in Priest. It says force each minion to attack another random minion. And the key here obviously is that minions can attack other friendly minions. So the ideal scenario is using it like a brawl. So you have no minions, or maybe 1 or 2 or 1 minion maybe. I mean, ideally you don't have any, right? And you play this and your opponent's minions ram into each other and kill each other off. Eventually there'll be 1 or 2 left, hopefully for you. And then you can sort of manageably take the game forward from there. Now, there are situations where this is bad, but honestly, a lot of the aggro decks aren't going to like this. Zoo, Baku Paladin, and the Hunter Spellstone don't match up well against this card. So very strong. This is kind of a classic Priest problem where the classic set doesn't have a board clear. So every set, Priest gets another one, and here's the other one, not the new one. So in Wild, you just get more and more options to clear the board. Can't even count them all. We have Excavated Evil. We have Mass Hysteria now. We have Light Bomb, Dragon Potion, and of course Psychic Scream. So we're getting close to the point in Wild where you can literally just play all mass removals, which would be kind of funny. So very strong card here. Not as good as Brawl, but it's close, right? It's close to Brawl, I think, and that makes it quite a strong card. Ember Scale Drake is a 5-mana 5/5 dragon in Warrior, so we're finally seeing one of the new dragons. We've seen a lot of dragon synergy cards, and whatever dragon Warrior was going to get was bound to be at least somewhat playable because the dragon synergy cards are good, and because this is also a very good card, it's 1 mana less than Shield Maiden. It has no choice but to be a very strong constructed card, and we'll see a lot of play. Grawl the Shark, 5-mana 2/2 beast in Rogue, but it has a Battlecry and a Death Rattle. Eat a minion in your deck and gain its stats, and then when it dies, you add the minion to your hand. So we have a new take on a Mira card here, sort of a mid-rangey Death Rattle value card. This has the opportunity to both gain you tempo in the sense that, well, you could get, you know, a 10/10, or like if you eat the Lich King, you get a huge 10/10, and then you get an extra Lich King to your hand. So it gets the value from the Death Rattle, and it has the possibility to sort of get you tempo. Now, obviously, you're just making a huge stat stick, right? If you eat a mid-range minion, you're making a 5-mana 6/6 or something, or 5-mana 6/7. That, you know, it doesn't affect the board, but because it's so much stats, it could definitely keep the tempo alive. And the Death Rattle is just all value. So just a very strong card here. Even like the worst case scenario, you get like a Firefly. It's a 3/4. And when it dies, you get a Firefly, which you can at least use for combo enabling. So, no, a 5-mana 3/4 with the Death Rattle, you know, add 2 cards to your hand is not an ideal card, but it's not like a complete disaster card. The big punish here is, of course, silence. If this gets silenced, you kind of lose on 2 fronts, right? You lose your big man, and you lose your value going forward. But you know, you can't not play a card just because it's weak to silence, right? We figured that out with Carnivorous Cube. Carnivorous Cube gets silenced. Now the Cube is still big. This one is weaker to silence than Cube was, but I don't think you're scared of silence. And I think this card might see play just everywhere because it has huge upside. You know, getting something like the Lich King or Test Greymane or something. And the downside is just kind of silence, right? So very strong card. Mahjong Announcer is a 5-mana 6/5. Enemies attacking this have a 50% chance to attack something else. And we had this confirmed that no, it's not as good as it reads, actually, right? It's not like misdirection. The attacking enemies cannot hit other friendly enemies. It hits only your stuff, right? So it's not the dream where you play it, they attack it, and then their guy bounces into their other guy and they have nothing left, right? So yeah, it's pretty cool. It's interesting that this is similar to Stranglethorn Tiger in some senses. In some senses, it's a little bit different, right? The Tiger just never gets attacked, where this thing, maybe you want it to get attacked, so your opponent is like gambling that something bad, you know, happens in the sense that maybe they hit face instead of, you know, clearing your creature. Although if you had Tiger and your opponent hit face, it'd be the same thing. So this does have an extra stat point over the Tiger, which is not irrelevant whatsoever. It doesn't have the beast tag like the Tiger does, which you see coming here might be a relevant thing. Although there might be reasons you don't like. Where do you play this card, right? Like I guess it gets played as a top end aggressive in an aggressive deck, right? So is there a better choice at 5 mana in aggressive deck? Probably something like Fungalmancer gets played over this. So this is a cool card. It just might have a problem finding a home outside of, you know, playing the all ogre deck in Wild, which might be kind of interesting, right? Just have all these random things going on. So cool design. Probably a good decision that it's epic because it's probably not something you're going to need to craft whatsoever. Sightless Ranger is a 5-mana 3/4 with Rush, and it says Overkill, summon 2 1/1 bats. So if you kill a 2 health minion, you get 2 bats out of the deal. You kind of have to do that to get sort of the value of the card generally. 5-mana 3/4 Rush isn't like completely terrible, but getting the bats makes the card pretty good. I think it's a little bit not pushed enough either with the mana cost department or the stats department to see constructed play, but I imagine this is a very solid arena card. Snapjaw Shell Fighter is a 5 mana 3/8 neutral. It's pretty big. Actually, that's very big for 5 mana, right? Whenever an adjacent minion takes damage, this minion takes damage instead. So how are you using this? Well, I think you need to protect minions with some attack. In fact, the more attack they have, the better. If you're protecting the spirits, the O3s, it's a little bit awkward because your opponent attacks the O3 after it becomes unstealthed, and their minion doesn't take any damage. So, but if you're protecting a 3/3, like maybe after a Hunter Spellstone, this basically has taunt, right? Because they want to kill the 3/3, they take damage off the board, but then they end up running into this thing. But it's sort of like a Witchwood Grizzly if your board is threatening. And 3/8 is pretty big, right? The taunts for 5 mana usually have 6 health at the most, and so a 3/8 here is just a big upgrade on that kind of a card. Mark of the Loa, 4 mana Druid spell. Choose one, give a minion +2/+4, and taunt or summon 2 3/2 raptors. I think the flexibility in this card is what makes it pretty strong, actually. The buff side might get used not often on turn 4 because what are you doing when Druid to want a Blessing of Kings on turn 4? Usually Druid decks kind of fall into the Oaken Summons archetype, which this does play well with, right? If you use the Raptor version, the way to make a creature without having to put a creature in your deck that you don't want to summon with Oaken Summons. So pretty cool to that extent. All right. Yeah, so the buff is strong because it's very close to Blessing of Kings. The important thing about Kings is the health, not the attack, generally. And if you are, ahead on the board in the early game, then this keeps you ahead. And most likely, though, in a Druid deck, you're going to be summoning the Raptors, I imagine. And then every once in a while, you play the buff for value or defense. Predatory Instincts, another 4 mana Druid spell. Draw a beast from your deck, double its health. Big interaction here with Witchwood Grizzly on curve, right? You play this, you draw the Witchwood Grizzly, possibly the only beast in your deck, and it becomes a 3/24, and then whatever health it loses based on your opponent's hand. So it's going to be close to 20 health or so when you play this on turn 5. That's just huge. If your opponent has a silence, well, you still get a 3/12 out of the deal. So that's kind of silly, and I can just see this card being really good just because of Witchwood Grizzly. The other way to use this card is with just Tyrantus. You summon, you draw the Tyrantus from your deck, you make it huge, and then you're going to have to cheat it into play with the card, what's it called? Stampeding Roar. So you play this on turn 4, you get your Tyrantus out of your deck, it's going to be a 12/24, and then you play it on turn 6 or whatever you ramped to, whatever turn you ramped to 6 mana, and you have a rushing 12/24 can't be targeted beast, and that just might be enough to win the game. So I think exactly with Witchwood Grizzly and even Tyrantus, and obviously the new legendary beast too might find a win your deck. But see the more beasts you put in your deck, the less guaranteed you are to get sort of what you want, right? If you want to get that Witchwood Grizzly defense, then you can really only put Witchwood Grizzly in your deck. If you want to sort of do a Tyrantus combo, you're going to need to put more beasts in your deck probably. So when you draw your only Tyrantus, then you don't sort of have this be dead. So interesting card. I think, again, it gets played in 2 ways. Lots of big beast deck and then just Witchwood Grizzly kind of thing, right? Walk the Plank, 4 mana. Destroy an undamaged minion in Rogue here. Very strong card here. Just a better version of Assassinate. Assassinate is kind of close to constructed playable. It pops up every once in a while, a lot of times with Arcane Tyrant synergy. Now this doesn't have the Tyrant synergy, but it's just very efficient at what it does. It is better than Polymorph in some situations. With cubes running around, obviously Polymorph is way better right now. But against giants, this does the job. This also is, having 1 less mana than Assassinate means you're able to combo with this card in the late game easier, right? So you play your Walk the Plank into Vosspine Slayer in the late game faster than you would with Assassinate. So very strong card here. I do think this is one of the best cards in the set, and it's just going to be very useful in a lot of situations. Grifta, legendary neutral here, 4 mana, 4/5, so it's a Yeti with the battle cry. Discover 2 cards, give one to your opponent at random. Very interesting design here. And I think this card is getting a lot of unnecessary hate because it's not as good as it could have been, right? If it was like discover 2 cards, pick 1, give the other to your opponent, then obviously it's much, 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 much better. In fact, it might be really good at that point because you could, you know, pick a worthless card, and the next time you pick the best card, and you give the worthless card to your opponent, and then you have just a Yeti with value. I think this card does get looked at in decks where hand size matters, the new sort of Mage archetype where you just want to fill your hand up as much as possible. You can play a Yeti here, keep your hand full. Outside of that, any deck running Mountain Giant might take a look at this. I think it's better than the hate it's getting. Obviously, it's not going to, you know, take over standard or anything because it does have the opportunity to be a disaster, but it is really fun. High Priestess Jeklik, 4 mana 3/4 legendary with taunt and lifesteal. When you discard this, add 2 copies to your hand. Very, 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 very strong card here. And you just want to discard this thing, and when you do, the first time it just gets better because it just makes all your subsequent, you know, discard cards almost have no disadvantage, and in fact an advantage because you're netting cards in the process. And the cards you net actually work well in numbers because of the lifesteal on them, right? If this didn't have lifesteal, it's a much different card, but because you're just filling the board with these cards that, you know, sustain you for a late game Gul'dan shenanigans, this is kind of exactly what you want to be doing. We talk about Gul'dan being bad in discard, but not anymore with the new 6-drop that can recover cards that you have discarded. And if you recover more High Priestess Jekliks, then, well, it gets pretty crazy. This is definitely one of the best cards in the set because when it works, it's kind of nutty. This is also kind of hilarious with exactly Deathwing. If you have 1 or 2 of them, you play Deathwing. Now, instead of having no hand, you have, you may possibly 4 to 5, or I guess it would be even, you'd have 2 to 4 to 6 to 8 copies of this in your hand afterwards to keep going with. So very cool card here, very strong, and this card is finally viable, right? Murloc Tasty Fin, 4 mana 3/2 Murloc with the death roll, draw 2 Murlocs from your deck. Notably, you have to get them from your deck. You don't just get them out of the ether. So yeah, this is a possible reload card for Murloc decks that want to curve 1, 2, 3. That's not the easiest thing to do because a lot of the class Murlocs, have gone to wild. So is this good? It's interesting in the sense that you could play this to get exactly Cold Light Oracle in wild. In standard, using it as a reload card for Murlocs, I don't think it gets there. It is notable that there are some bigger Murlocs. You can play the Amalgams, 3 mana, 3/4. So let's say you play this in a light Murloc deck. Maybe you have 2 War Leaders, 2 of the charge minions, and then 2 of the Amalgams. You play this as kind of like a value card to get mid-range creatures. That's not the best strategy in the world to do in Constructed. But any card that draws 2, you have to look at a little bit, right? It's no Elven Minstrel, but in some sense, it's very close to Elven Minstrel, right? It's the same cost. You don't have to combo it. You get 2 cards and 2 creatures, in fact. So any card that draws 2, you got to pay attention to at least a little bit, right? Spirit of the Shark. We have the Rogue Spirit here. It's a 4 mana 0/3. They're all 0/3s with stealth for 1 turn. And your minions, battle cries, and combos trigger twice. Okay, so what are you doing on turn 5 with this? Well, we can look at some of the battle cry 5 drops. We got Grawl, the new Grawl. That seems pretty good. Seems like a lot of value there. And you get Mira. That could be good too, getting 2 Death Rattles. You got Shadowcaster. Maybe you Shadowcaster this thing to play it again later at some point. Interesting. You have Elise. That could be fun. Just get 2 packs in your deck. Not much tempo, but a lot of fun. What else we got? We got Fungomancer. Now, this one's interesting. You play Fungomancer. You give 2 minions +4/+4, and maybe you give the shark, one of those buffs. And then all of a sudden it's a 4/7? That's kind of nutty. So yeah, so I think this gets played with Fungomancer exactly. This means you can't do the Baku Rug, but pretty damn strong card with exactly Fungomancer. What else is there? There's the Captain Greenskin. If you have a weapon going, well, you get 2 weapon buffs. That seems pretty strong too, right? You can play the turn 3 weapon. We got a couple choices at turn 3: the Necrian Blade or the other one, the Shadow Blade, I think it's called, something like that. Shadow Blade. You play this on 3. The blade on 4, you attack something, you know, keep the tempo going. Turn 4, you can't attack with your weapon because your plan is to play Greenskin on 5. Greenskin is a 1-of, so you can't reliably get that combo. Although, there might be some ways to draw pirates coming up, right? So, pretty cool card here. It's not... Playing an 0-3 on turn 4 is generally not what you want to be doing. And if you get punished by a Dustbreaker or Dustbreaker type card, that kind of sucks because you didn't get any value. But if you can hit something like Bungomancer or Captain Greenskin, you're in for a good time. Spirit of the Tiger, another spirit, this time in Paladin, with stealth for 1 turn, like they all do. After you cast a spell, summon a tiger with stats equal to its cost. So if you make a 5-mana spell, you get a 5/5 tiger. If you play a 6-mana spell, like a Spikered Steed, you get a 6/6 tiger, and you protect the Spirit of the Tiger. That seems like a sweet combo. So maybe you play this on turn 5, and then hope to have a target for the Spikered Steed on turn 6. Now, if you target the tiger with the Spikered Steed, that's not ideal because you want to protect the tiger. You could also play this on turn 4 and then play a Call to Arms on turn 5 and hope to get some taunts out of the deal. And while at the least you can get Dirty Rats to protect it and a Noyotron. So a little bit of a layaway card here, right? You play it and then hope to recoup your losses for the turn, the next turn, and subsequent turns. And it can snowball out of control pretty quickly if you play a big spell, you know, in your next 3 turns. So it could easily win the game if it is not answered. I think this one is better than the Rogue one because the potential to snowball, I think, is a bit better. You're not having to rely on Battlecry creatures. All you need is spells. Ticket Scalper, 4-mana, 5/3 pirate neutral. Overkill, draw 2 cards. So if you get the overkill on this at any point, you're having a good time. Does this get played in an aggressive pirate deck to reload? Possibly, if you're ahead enough on the board, it could be a very strong play. This definitely sees play in any deck running Captain Hooktusk, because it's basically one of the best things to rush out there on turn 8. And yeah, we'll definitely see play in anyone trying Captain Hooktusk. And it might be just good enough in an aggressive pirate deck because you assume you're going to win the board with the early game pirates, and then you play this to reload. Warmaster Boon is a 4-mana 4/3 legendary and warrior with the battlecry copy all dragons in your hand. So we just saw one very strong dragon, the 5-mana 5/5 gain 5 armor. And this plays right into that because even if you just have that one dragon, you play this turn 4 for the 4/3, you copy the dragon, and then you're on turn 5, your dragon is guaranteed to have another dragon in your hand. Now you have to figure out how you have another dragon for the next dragon. If you have 2 dragons in your hand, this thing's kind of nutty, and you don't even sacrifice that much tempo to draw, you know, 2 to 4 cards or whatever with this card because the 4/3 on 4 isn't a complete disaster. Not ideal for your 4-drop, but again, they could have made this a lot smaller, and it still might have seen a bit of play, right? 4-mana 4/3, again, not a disaster. Copying even just 1 dragon seems like a good deal. Copying 2 dragons is crazy. Copying 3 dragons, like, what the heck, man? And your dragons gain armor? So let's say you had 2 of the armor dragons. You copy them both. You have 4 5/5s that give you 5 armor. Your opponent is going to have a nightmare time trying to whittle you down if every turn you're playing a 5/5 and gaining 5 armor. So just a very strong card. Notably not odd, and I think that was the key to making this pushed. They want to give you a reason to not be Baku. So kudos to Blizzard for that, right? Warrior is getting pushed very heavily in the Baku direction just because of how strong, you know, having that huge tank up is in the early game and throughout your long grindy game plan. This gives you a reason not to be Baku, and it's a pretty damn good reason. So very cool. It's possible that this doesn't see play at high levels of constructed because Baku is still the best strategy, maybe even Baku Dragons. This does pull you in another direction, which is good. Zandalari Templar, a 4-mana 4/4 Paladin minion here. Battlecry, if you restore 10 health this game, it gains +4/+4 and taunt for just 4 mana. So another Hooked Reaver type of card, this time in Paladin. Generally worse than Hooked Reaver, I think, because even though it's bigger than Hooked Reaver at 8/8 over 7/7, the Hooked Reaver basically just asked you to be a Warlock. This one you have to work for. There are some tools. We have the new legendary Paladin minion coming up here, High Priest Thekla, to help you make sure you can actually gain health which is an issue a lot of times. I have tried the Heal and Paladin with the Spellstone quite a bit, and we're finally getting more support for it, so it might be a thing. The quickest way to gain health is definitely Zeliax. Zeliax, if it's magnetized, possibly gets you a big chunk on the rush, and then if your opponent has to attack into it, boom, you're probably at 10 right away. Without the magnetized, you're looking at 6 health. At that point, maybe, right, you rush into it, gain 3, and then your opponent attacks, you get another 3, that's 6, and then maybe you need one more card to activate these things. So I do think this is good when it's supported, and it will see play. Uther, another way to get this activated really quickly in the late game. You play Uther, you attack something, you gain 5. The next turn, you attack something, you gain 5. So at that point, you can play 2 Zandalari Templars in 1 turn. Overlords Whip is a 3-mana, 2/4 weapon. That's a lot of durability, but it says after you play a minion, deal 1 damage to it. Well, I can think of one minion that goes well with this, obviously Acolyte of Pain. Outside of that, I do think this is kind of a downside. I have experimented with the 1-mana, 1/3 card that does damage to your minions, and if I couldn't get that to work, I don't really see a reason why the deal 1 damage to your minion is actually good at all. And I think also the 2 attack on this weapon is the doom of it. You really want to get that 3 attack on turn 3. Zoo decks have a lot of 3 drops. 4 durability is a lot, but the durability also blocks a card like Blood Razor. Now, if you are Odd Warrior, do you need this card? I don't think so, just because of how strong, Taunt Up is in the early game. You don't really need to control the board too often, and because you have access to double Brawl and double Reckless Flurry, having to use a weapon to kill your opponent's minions just doesn't go into your game plan. You're going to tank up. You're going to Brawl when you need to. You're going to Reckless Flurry when you need to. You're going to play the new mech card that, deals damage to the board. You don't need to be attacking 4 times for 2 damage. Haunting Vision. We have a new take on Primordial Glyph, this time in Shaman for 3 mana. It says the next spell you cast this turn costs 3 less, and you discover a spell. So almost like a free roll discovery here, as long as you are playing a very spell heavy deck. If you were going to Lightning Storm this turn anyway, well, you play this first. You might get something better than Storm, although probably not. You just take something for later, and then you play your 0 mana Lightning Storm. If you're going to need to hex something this turn, well, play this first, get something for later, and then go ahead and play your hex for 1 mana. So this is very strong. In fact, it might be an auto include in any deck with, a certain number of spells that cost 3 or more, because it's just kind of a free roll. The glyph has the problem where you play it, you could get an answer, but then you might block the answer you already had in your hand. This is kind of, again, a free roll, and it is just a very strong card. Again, might be a auto include in many, many Shaman decks. A little bit unfortunate that is an epic card. We had the epic, the Primordial Glyph was epic. I think that was kind of a mistake because it ended up seeing so much play. You kind of want your epic cards not to be must-crafts, and this one looks like it is a must-craft, a very strong card. Master's Call, 3-mana Hunter spell. Discover a minion in your deck. If all 3 are beasts, you draw all 3. So you really don't want to have a non-beast in your deck when you play this. Now, there is a non-beast coming up that synergizes with this kind of insanely, and we'll talk about that when we get there, but assuming you only put beasts in your deck, I really like the design of this card because it pushes you in another direction that Hunter had been going down recently. The Carnivorous Cube Death Rattle Hunter doesn't really want to play a card like this because it has so many non-beasts in it. And Houndmaster Shaw, just a very auto-includey kind of legendary that you might have to consider not playing if you're trying to get the full value out of Master's Call. Raiding Party is another 3-mana draw card, this time in Rogue. Draw 2 pirates from your deck, and if you comboed, you get to draw a weapon. Should be interesting to see what people do with this. What weapon are we getting? Are we getting King's Bane? Are we getting Necrium Blade for Death Rattle synergies? Or are we getting Assassin's Blade out of the classic set? Interesting here. I don't think this gets played in aggressive decks. Could be wrong. I think this more likely gets played with the Captain Hook Tusk and the new Ticket Scalper kind of a deck, where you're playing more of a control game and you use this for value. But we shall see. Overall, I like the design of this card quite a bit. Splitting Image is a secret in Mage. It's obviously 3 mana. It says when one of your minions is attacked, summon a copy of it. So when you play around this card, it's gonna, you play around it similarly to Effigy from the past here. It's nice to see a secret without a huge power level like explosive runes here. We're more in line with what secrets in Mage are supposed to be. They're good sometimes. They can be played around quite well a lot of times. And because you get them so often for free, they just can't be as good as explosive runes. And so Blizzard, I think, is toning back here with this splitting image. Again, very similar to effigy. One thing to be noted, it says a copy. We're going to assume that the copy is going to copy any damage that is already on the minion, because how nutty is this with Witchwood Grizzly if it didn't copy the damage, right? If you played like a 3/5 Grizzly, your opponent attacks it, we're going to assume it's going to summon a 3/5 Grizzly. If it summons a 3/12 Grizzly, well, that's a combo. This is probably best used with exactly the Lich King. Like, your opponent attacks an 8/8 Lich King, all of a sudden there's another 8/8 Lich King, so it's sort of a controllable effigy to some extent, right? Surrender to Madness. 3 mana, pre-spell, destroy 3 of your mana crystals. That's not good, guys. Give all minions in your deck +2/+2. So we have an interesting take on a win condition type card here. And I don't think this is going to be good, but we will definitely experiment with it. I will say the reveal of the new legendary, what's it called here? See if I can find it real quickly. Mojo Master Zihi does kind of synergize with this card because you set both players back to 5. So if you play this on 10, go to 7, and then play the Mojo Master, well, yeah, you lose a bunch of crystals, but your opponent does too. So that could be a thing. I think any deck that runs the Surrender to Madness will run the new Mojo Master card just because of that situation. Time Out. 3 mana Paladin spell. Your hero is immune until your next turn. So another variant of an ice block here, like Evasion before it. This doesn't have these secret synergies that those two cards have, although Evasion never really was used, with any sort of secret synergy. It is definitely not as good as ice block, but this will definitely see a home in any deck trying to OTK because of how powerful chaining these back-to-back can be, right? You play the timeout, they can't kill you. You play another timeout the following turn, they pull their hair out and are very frustrated. And doing that twice might give you enough time to recover or finish your OTK combo. Blood Scalp Strategist, 3 mana 2/4 Hunter minion with the battle cry. If you have a weapon equipped, discover a spell. So that's powerful when it works. Definitely is going to combo with Candle Shot. The issue here is I don't think you can get away with just running 2 Candle Shots and this guy or this lady. You have to run more weapons. Now, there are good weapons in Hunter. We have Eaglehorn Bow. So I think at the very least you run 2 Candle Shots, 2 Eaglehorn Bows with these strategists, and very likely you'll have a play around turn 3 or turn 4 where you're going to be able to discover a spell. Bog Slosher, 3 mana, 3/3 Elemental and Shaman. Of course it's the Elemental. There's all randomly Elementals. With the battle cry, return a friendly minion to your hand and give it +2/+2. So a couple obvious synergies here. We have turn 2 Prince Khaliseth, turn 3 Bounce Prince, and then play it later as a 4/4 and another battle cry. We have the Sarnite Chain Gang combo, which is probably the way this gets used the most in Shutterwalk decks. You play the Chain Gang and this in the same turn maybe, or you play the Chain Gang, hope one of the Chain Gang survives, bounce one of them back, and then all of a sudden you have 2, 4, 5 taunts. And you can also use this in the early game with Menacing Nimbus. So this kind of slots right into Shutterwalk decks, and it's going to be strong in those decks. The fact that it's also just randomly an Elemental means this also sees play in decks that are just Elemental heavy. Bouncing something like a Glacial Shard is a lot of value. High Priest Thekla, Paladin Legendary, 3/4 for 3 mana. Convert all but one of your hero's health into armor. So this is like a guaranteed 5-star power level card, because at the very least in Wild, you can play 0 mana Molten Giants. In fact, you could coin this out and have 2 Molten Giants on turn 2. I think you're going to win that game. So at the very least in Wild, this is very strong. In Standard, this obviously opens up support for the Healing deck. One of the issues that deck had, I tried very hard to make the Spellstone work. One of the issues it had was if you don't actually heal, you're not upgrading your Spellstones or activating your Heal Matter cards. So this gets you there, right? Gets you to 1, so you have 29 health to work with and to heal up with. So that concludes part 2 of my Rastakhan's Rumble set review. I hope you guys will tune in tomorrow as well to check out the 3rd part, where we're going to go over all the cards revealed so far. There'll be one final video once the entire set is revealed, covering anything we might have missed. If you guys agree or disagree with anything I said today, make sure you let me know in the comments. We're not always right about these cards. In fact, sometimes we are hilariously wrong. It's always fun going back and looking at the old set reviews and see what we thought was 5 stars or what was terrible. I think Prince Kelly Seth I thought was terrible. Turns out we were a little bit wrong on that, to say the least, right? Thanks for tuning in, guys. I'll see you later.
Thanks for making it to the end of the video, guys. I have links here for more content. And if you would like to see the channel grow, please click that subscribe button in the middle. Thank you so much, and I will see you next time.